Please welcome the CEO of Freedom House, the Honorable Jamie Fly.
Good evening. We're going to get the program started, so please take your seats. Good evening. Welcome to the Freedom House 2026 Annual Awards Ceremony. Tonight, we gather to honor individuals, organizations, and nations that have shown extraordinary courage and determination in advancing liberty around the world. As many of you know, this year marks a milestone anniversary for Freedom House. 85 years ago, Eleanor Roosevelt and Wendell Willkie reached across the political divide to establish a new and urgent venture. Recruiting business and labor leaders, public officials, academics, and journalists, they set out to unite the nation and embolden the American spirit of democracy against the rising tide of authoritarianism overseas and isolationism at home. They believed deeply in the principles expressed in the Declaration of Independence, that all humans desire to be free and that government derives its power from the consent of the governed. As the United States this year marks its 250th anniversary, these principles remain as consequential and as contested as ever. Every person in this room understands, just as Roosevelt and Willkie did 85 years ago, that freedom is never self-sustaining. It survives here at home, as well as abroad, only when people are willing to defend it. So 85 years later, we at Freedom House now carry forward that same mission that Wendell Willkie and Eleanor Roosevelt started all those years ago. Earlier this year, I was proud to accept the role of Freedom House CEO because I, along with all my colleagues and the entire team at Freedom House, do not believe that the global decline in liberty is inevitable. I also joined Freedom House because throughout my career, I have witnessed the power of the organization's work for decades. In 2020, when I was involved in bringing Russian opposition figure Boris Nemtsov, with some others who are in the room tonight, to Washington to make his case for American support for the Russian opposition, Freedom House was the organization that we turned to help amplify Boris's courageous voice. And Freedom House's engagement ultimately led to an effort that culminated in the congressional passage of the Magnitsky Act. This act has now been used by multiple administrations to target human rights abusers around the globe, including the Kremlin officials who 5 years after Boris's visit to Washington ordered his assassination in 2015. In 2016, when I worked on Capitol Hill for then Senator Marco Rubio, Freedom House was the organization that we turned to for expertise as we decided what issues to raise with foreign governments and which causes to champion. More recently, in 2021 and 2022, as I was president and CEO of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, when our journalists fled Belarus, Russia, Afghanistan, and other countries, Freedom House was the organization that we turned to provide support to these brave men and women and their families and ensure that they had somewhere to go. Just weeks ago, when I visited the Freedom House office in Vilnius, Lithuania, I was able to reunite with several of my former RFE/RL journalists, Andrei Kuznechik and Oleg Kudrysovich, who served years as political prisoners in Belarus for just being journalists. Once they crossed the Lithuanian border, Oleg in 2022 and Andrei in 2025, it was Freedom House staff who were among the first to welcome them to freedom, as Freedom House has for so many others who have made the same journey. Unfortunately, Andrei and Oleg's experiences are far too common today, not just in Eurasia, but across the globe, from Latin America to Asia. In 2025, we at Freedom House documented the 20th consecutive year of decline in global freedom. Around the world, authoritarian governments are rigging elections, they're crushing independent journalism, they're imprisoning dissidents, and they're using new technologies to surveil and silence critics. The forces that Freedom House was created to confront have unfortunately evolved and grown more sophisticated over the last 85 years. And yet, for that entire time, we have continued to expose the abuses of power, we've defended independent voices, and we've supported those fighting for basic rights around the world. That work that we do at Freedom House is not always visible. It often has to happen quietly because the people we support face real danger. Since 2007, our direct support programs have assisted more than 63,000 activists and survivors across 170 countries. This effort has included relocation assistance, legal support, trial monitoring, medical expenses, equipment, and other urgent needs. That is what defending freedom looks like in practice, and that is what Freedom House does. All of this work is only possible because of the extraordinary commitment of our staff, our partner organizations, and our bipartisan board, and so many of you here tonight. You are all people who believe that human dignity and democratic rights are worth defending, and we thank you for your support. Freedom House's anniversary, as we enter our 85th, is not simply a moment to celebrate and look back, but it is a call to strengthen our mission for the future. So that is why tonight, I'm proud to announce that this event is launching our Investing in Freedom's Future campaign, an ambitious campaign to raise $85 million over the next 5 years to our 90th anniversary to strengthen Freedom House's work. This will continue to allow us to defend liberty and support those on the front lines of freedom worldwide. We at Freedom House understand that this is an ambitious goal, but we believe that at this moment, as the authoritarians get stronger and stronger, the stakes demand ambition. The authoritarians are investing in repression, they're sharing tactics, they're using technology, corruption, propaganda, and violence to tighten their grip and to weaken the democratic world. So those of us who believe in liberty must be just as serious, utilizing what Ronald Reagan referred to as the greatest weapon in our arsenal as people living in a free society, what he called the, quote, will and moral courage of free men and women. This campaign that we're about to launch will give us the resources to meet this moment, to support those risking everything for basic rights, defending independent voices, and it'll allow us to strengthen our research and advocacy, and it'll allow us to ensure that we can continue this mission into its next chapter. So later in the program, you will hear more about the campaign through several of our speakers tonight, including our board chairman, Norman Willix, who I want to call out in particular because Norm has led this amazing board over the last year as they all have stepped forward at this critical moment to ensure Freedom House's long-term financial stability and to make sure that we as an organization can continue to grow and to meet the challenge. Please join me in a round of applause for the board. So thank you to all of them and to all of you for attending tonight, for your support, for investing in Freedom's future, and for joining us in this mission that Freedom House is about to embark on over the next 5 years. So now I'm going to introduce tonight's MC. She is an actor, a producer, a human rights advocate, whose work has helped shine a global spotlight on the struggle for freedom and human dignity in Iran and around the world. Please welcome my friend, Nazanin Boniadi. Nazanin.
Good evening, everyone. I am thrilled to be here with you, especially at a time when the promises of democracy seem out of reach for too many. It's a pleasure to spend an evening surrounded by friends who share a common cause, that we will accept nothing less than a world where all are free. Tonight, we will celebrate honorees whose extraordinary commitment to freedom makes such a world possible. Our award recipients include a nation that is singular in its commitment to freedom, a leader standing tall in the face of escalating democratic backsliding, an organization defending independent media in the United States, a leader promoting the ideals of civil society across Latin America, an advocate working tirelessly to free political prisoners and bring freedom to her homeland, and a media pioneer unjustly detained for promoting transparency and speaking truth to power. This evening will also be our chance to support the next chapter of Freedom House. The Investing in Freedom's Future campaign marks a defining moment for this historic organization. Now is the time for bold commitments and bold action. To inspire us, Freedom House has arranged something special with Laura Roosevelt, the great-granddaughter of President Roosevelt and Eleanor Roosevelt. Laura is an American contemporary artist whose work explores the intersection of democracy, history, and human experience. Freedom House commissioned Laura to create 5 works that will be auctioned off here tonight. You can use the QR codes next to each piece to place your bids before 8:30 p.m. Some of you have already gotten a peek. They're stunning, dramatic, and definitely one of a kind. To tell us more about her work, please welcome Laura Roosevelt.
Good evening. It is a tremendous honor to stand before you tonight during the 85th anniversary celebration of Freedom House. First, I want to thank Norm Willocks and Dave Willocks, Meadow Koloski and Jim Baird of Freedom House, and Wendell Wilkie II. What began as a simple phone call became one of the most meaningful artistic journeys of my life. The call came through Wendell Wilkie's grandson, who wanted to speak about this event, the anniversary of Freedom House. Our conversation eventually turned to my historic American pop body of work and the way history can be interpreted through contemporary art. At first, I was struck by the irony of history itself. Franklin Roosevelt and Wendell Wilkie once stood on opposite sides of one of the most consequential presidential elections in American history. Yet, over time, history carried them somewhere larger. As I began researching, I became fascinated by how Eleanor and Wendell Wilkie ultimately shared a belief that freedom belonged to all people, not simply Americans, not simply political allies, but humanity itself. This realization became the foundation for my 5 paintings. Freedom House gave me an extraordinary gift. There were no restrictions, no prescribed direction. They trusted me to respond to the idea of freedom itself. The first painting emerged almost immediately. I found myself returning to Eleanor Roosevelt and her role in shaping the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I kept thinking about the strength it must have taken for her to move from personal loss into becoming one of the world's defining voices for human dignity. That painting I've titled The Declaration. It became not simply a portrait of Eleanor holding up the Declaration of Human Rights, but a statement about compassion, about responsibility, about the belief that human rights belong to everyone. Then something unexpected happened. As I learned more about the Wilkie connection, I discovered the bust that inspired my painting, Equality of Man. This painting had been presented posthumously by the NAACP to Freedom House. At that moment, I realized these paintings could not stand silently on their own. Historic American pop has always combined image and language because history lives not only on in pictures, but in declarations, in speeches, in promises, and in unfinished conversations. Wilkie's words became inseparable from the painting. Freedom must extend to all people, whether rich or poor, whether they agree with us or not, no matter their race or the color of their skin. As I worked on, I knew that Martin Luther King Jr. had to become part of the conversation. Let Freedom Ring became my attempt to capture not simply a historic speech, but a spiritual belief of eruption. His raised hands reach not only toward the future, but honors the generations who fought before him and those who continue the struggle for freedom today. Then came a world where all are free. This painting carried me toward protest movements, dissidents, and the universal image of hands lifted into the air. Some hands celebrate freedom. Some surrender to oppression. Some demand to be seen. But all ask the same question: can humanity truly create a world where all are free? Finally, I returned to Franklin Roosevelt and the Four Freedoms. I imagine him seated before the radio microphones during one of his fireside chats, speaking not only to America, but to a frightened world, searching for direction. I discovered a wartime map published in the Los Angeles Times for listeners to follow along with this broadcast. This map transformed the painting, Paint the World Green, into something larger than history itself. It became about the global struggle between fear and freedom. And perhaps, isn't this what Freedom House has represented for 85 years? Not perfection, not ideology, but the persistent belief that freedom must continue to be defended, to be protected, expanded, and to be imagined. These paintings are not intended to preserve history quietly. They are meant to reawaken it, because freedom is never finished. It is handed from one generation to the next to the next. And tonight, I am deeply honored that these pieces now become part of the continuing conversation Freedom House has carried into the world for 85 years. Thank you.
Presenting the first award of the evening, please welcome Co-Chair Emeritus of the Freedom House Board, former 9-term Congresswoman from California, the Honorable Jane Harman.
Good evening. Laura, your art is amazing. And oh, by the way, as a young student, I actually met Eleanor Roosevelt. So, what a way to support Freedom House. It's a pleasure to be here celebrating 85 years. And Jamie Fly, you and your team are doing a marvelous job ensuring this organization's vital mission is stronger than ever. Congratulations to the staff of Freedom House. For more than half a century, Freedom House has stood watch over the condition of political rights and civil liberties around the world. Diligently, we assess the changing state of freedom, identifying the red flags to address and the signs of optimism to nurture. Increasingly, liberties are being lost in two ways: repression by authoritarian regimes, and through the more subtle erosion of democratic institutions and norms within freer societies. Freedom House's watchful eye has never been more vital. Policymakers, journalists, academics, activists, and many others rely on the insights and analysis our global team of regional specialists and expert advisors. Each year, we formally present their findings in the Freedom in the World report, the most widely read and cited publication of its kind. Freedom House rates every country across a series of indicators derived primarily from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which exists thanks to Eleanor Roosevelt. To score the full total of 100 takes an extraordinary commitment and vigilance to the security of freedom across all sectors of one's society. It is an exceedingly rare achievement, yet one country earned in 2025 a 100% score, and that country is Finland. Finland was the only country, singular, to earn a perfect score, demonstrating an adherence to political rights and civil liberties that should be replicated the world over. So tonight, for their exceptional democratic achievement and their standing as a global model of freedom and democratic governance, we are proud to present the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, with the 2026 Freedom House Leadership Award on behalf of Finland's accomplishments. Let me add that I've met President Stubb on several occasions, and he matches his amazing political gifts with a strong intellect and a delightful demeanor. To accept our award in person on behalf of Finland, please welcome Her Excellency, Leena-Mikkola, Ambassador of Finland to the United States.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jane Harman. And as you notice, I'm not Alexander Stubb. But on behalf of our president, I would like to thank Freedom House for this honor. You know, we Finns, we are modest people, but I can say that I'm deeply proud to represent both the president and my country here today. Finland is in many ways a wonderful place, largely thanks to the freedoms and individual liberties we enjoy. Our society is built on two fundamental values: trust and responsibility. These values go hand in hand. We trust our fellow citizens, and we trust that our society will support us in times of need. In return, each of us is expected to contribute according to our abilities. It is this balance of freedom, trust, and responsibility that holds our society together. It is also why we believe these values carry responsibilities beyond our own borders. Freedom and democracy do not sustain themselves. They must be protected and renewed through strong institutions, free media, education, equality, and the rule of law. Today, as these values face pressure around the world, we are reminded that democracy requires not only belief, but constant work. So that is why I want to thank Freedom House for its leadership over the past 85 years in advancing freedom and self-determination around the world. To further express our nation's appreciation for this award, we are honored to share a video message from the President of the Republic of Finland, Dr. Alexander Stubb. Thank you.
I'm deeply grateful to accept this year's Leadership Award. I view it not as a personal recognition, but as a tribute to the Finnish people. To everyone in Finland who is committed to building a fair and resilient society and to uphold democracy and human rights. In the latest Freedom in the World report, Finland received a score of 100 out of 100. It's a humbling figure. It reflects the long arch of our history, a country once torn by war, rebuilding itself through education, strong democratic institutions, and generations of dedicated work. Yet, globally, the statistics on freedom and democracy tell a troubling story. Global freedom has declined for 20 consecutive years. In the recent years, the rule of law and press freedom, the foundations of any democratic society, have faced significant erosion. Democracy is a never-ending project. It requires constant commitment and renewal. None of us can afford complacency. Decision makers, media, companies, NGOs, and citizens all share the responsibility to keep democracy alive and remain alert to signs of danger. Apathy is democracy's greatest enemy. I want to thank Freedom House not only for this award, but for the work that you have carried out for 85 years already. I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of Finland. Though I cannot be with you in person this evening, I send my warm greetings and wish you a wonderful event as you celebrate Freedom House's 85th anniversary. Thank you very much.
Welcome Freedom House Emeritus Board Member, Dr. Sushma Palmer.
Good evening. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I can't see anyone. First and foremost, I want to congratulate Freedom House on its 85th anniversary. It's a wonderful occasion, and I also want to congratulate the board, led by Norm Willox, and a number of others, Jane Harmon, Wendell Wilkie, and the fantastic staff led by Jamie Fly and a number of other people. It's a terrific occasion. And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to introduce the Mark Palmer Award for Diplomats, which is awarded by Freedom House every year. I want to especially thank Katie LaRocque and her team at Freedom House and the Mark Palmer Prize Committee. I believe some members of the committee, Steve Steiner, was sitting at my table, and I think a number of others are here too. Thank you so much for all your help. We established the award in 2011 to honor diplomats, and more recently, we added associates of international organizations who embody my late husband Mark's vision, which is to assist nations and civil societies in their pursuit of democracy and human rights. Mark's lifelong passion for promoting democracy emanated at Yale in the 1960s when he became a freedom rider in the civil rights movement. I met him a few years later in 1964, soon after he arrived in New Delhi on his first Foreign Service post. On our first date, he invited me to the Tibetan monastery for dinner. We sat cross-legged on the floor, and we were dining on yak soup. And I realized, I said, gosh, this is not a dinner date at all. Mark's main mission was really to support Tibetans in their struggle for independence from China, which was wonderful. Mark dedicated his Foreign Service career to placing democracy promotion at the forefront of American foreign policy. Notable among his achievements is his pivotal role in crafting President Ronald Reagan's landmark Westminster Address to the British Parliament in 1982. This speech, and perhaps Damon Wilson is here, the head of NED, it launched the National Endowment of Democracy. In his book, Breaking the Real Axis of Evil, Mark tells us how diplomats, Americans, French, Czech, and others stood alongside frontline dissidents in Chile, in Ukraine, which was oppressed at that time, and many other countries. In March 1989, while serving as the US ambassador to Hungary, Mark himself defied the State Department. He marched alongside Hungarian dissidents in the streets of Budapest to fight for democracy. I have to say he got a little slap on his wrist from the State Department. They were not happy at all, officially, so to speak. The Mark Palmer Prize honors such courage, acts that transcend duty, and extraordinary achievements by diplomats who are dedicated to defending and promoting democracy. To honor Mark's vision this year, Freedom House is proud to recognize Her Excellency Salome Zourabichvili, the 5th President of Georgia. She is a French-Georgian career diplomat whose remarkable service spans 3 decades in the French Foreign Service with senior postings across Europe, the United States, the UN, NATO, the OSCE, among others. Madam Zourabichvili joined the Georgian government following the Rose Revolution, and she became a Georgian citizen. She was appointed the Foreign Minister of Georgia, and in 2018, she was elected Georgia's first woman president. It soon became clear that she was a steadfast advocate for democratic governance and European integration. She played a vital role in securing a landmark agreement that ensured the removal of Russian military bases from Georgian soil. Madam Zourabichvili stood with her people amid sweeping repressive changes and strong pressure on the opposition, the media, and civil society. She also joined pro-democracy demonstrations in Tbilisi and reaffirmed her commitment to Georgia's democratic path and sovereignty. I regret to say that Her Excellency is not here this evening to receive the award, but we look forward to honoring Salome Zourabichvili with the 2026 Mark Palmer Award for Diplomats during her upcoming visit to Washington next month. Thank you so much, and good evening.
Welcome to the stage, Pulitzer Prize-winning author, investigative journalist, editor, and global news leader, Amanda Bennett.
Thank you. You know, this year marks a milestone for the United States.
the 250th anniversary of its founding. It's born out of the ideals of independence and equality, and the United States has long served as a global model for democracy. Of course, the rights promised by its founders were not immediately granted to all, and at times, US leaders have acted out of fear or a misguided instinct to retract individual freedoms. And that is why Freedom House has monitored the state of democracy in the United States, not only for the benefit of Americans, but because Freedom House recognizes the critical link between the vitality of US democracy and the advance of its ideals around the world. To further shine a light on those who defend liberty in the United States, Freedom House has established the Edward R. Murrow Guardian of Democracy Award, named for a person close to my own heart, the celebrated American journalist who once received Freedom House's flagship Freedom Award. This honor recognizes organizations or institutions in the United States that have demonstrated exemplary courage and commitment in defending democratic values. Tonight, we honor the award's first recipient, the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. Since 1970, the Reporters Committee has offered a 24/7 legal hotline that provides assistance to journalists negotiating public records, subpoena threats, protest coverage, and more. And it's also available in times when a journalist has been arrested. The Reporters Committee arranges for attorneys to pursue litigation on behalf of journalists and newsrooms in matters that involve the First Amendment, freedom of information, or court access, ensuring that members of the news media in need of legal defense have representation. Additionally, the committee's Pro-Adjourn program connects journalists to pro bono attorneys and outside law firms for assistance obtaining public records so they can increase system transparency through their reporting. The founders of the United States enshrined freedom of the press in the US Constitution. And tonight, we honor an organization ensuring that this nation lives up to the promise of that First Amendment. Accepting the award for the Reporters Committee for Freedom of Press, please welcome their Vice President from Legal Programs, Lisa Zeicherman.
Good evening and thank you. I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of everyone at the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press. We are so grateful to Freedom House for this recognition of the Reporters Committee's role in defending democracy. For more than 50 years, the Reporters Committee has provided free legal services for journalists and news organizations all across the United States. And in the face of mounting threats to press freedom in the US, the work we are doing today is more urgent than ever before. One of Freedom House's core beliefs is that freedom flourishes in democratic nations where governments are accountable to their people. And a free press is critical to giving people the news they need to ensure that their government is acting in the public's interest. At the Reporters Committee, our growing team of media attorneys work every day to defend journalists' rights to report the news and ultimately to protect the public's ability to access information. When government agencies deny local journalists access to public records and meetings, we sue for transparency. When a news outlet faces a subpoena or a frivolous lawsuit targeting their investigative reporting, we are there to help. And when policymakers pass unconstitutional laws that make it harder for journalists to do their jobs, we challenge them in court. The Reporters Committee's legal support, provided entirely for free, is critical infrastructure for the whole journalism community, from local reporters and investigative journalists to freelance photographers and documentary filmmakers. With the Reporters Committee in their corner, journalists are emboldened to push back against government secrecy and to defend their First Amendment rights. And when they win, our democracy does too. Thank you so very much.
As we celebrate the advance of freedom tonight, Freedom House reissues its call for global solidarity around the people of Iran. To share a special message, please welcome Nazanin Boniadi.
In 1981, a shipyard electrician in Gdansk, Poland, was arrested under martial law. His crime was helping workers organize. His movement, Solidarity, was crushed and banned by name. The Soviet bloc appeared immovable. 9 years later, Lech Wałęsa was sworn in as president of a free Poland. I begin there because Freedom House stood with the Polish people in 1981. It documented abuses, and it understood something the world repeatedly forgets. A regime's ability to crush a movement is not the same thing as its ability to erase its cause. Tonight, the people of Iran are living through their own dark chapter. For nearly half a century, Iranians have endured repression, censorship, corruption, and state violence under the Islamic Republic. But this year, that repression reached terrifying new heights, with the mass slaughter of protesters credibly estimated in the tens of thousands. But instead of multilateral humanitarian intervention, Iranians are now trapped between foreign firepower and intensified domestic repression. Promises to end tyranny have faded. An entrenched regime is accelerating executions under the cover of the longest state-imposed internet blackout in history. More than 630 people have been executed in Iran so far this year. Despite economic collapse and immense public suffering, the regime has sharply increased spending on state media, ideological institutions, and its security apparatus, as always prioritizing its own survival over the well-being of its people. That reality reveals something crucial. The Islamic Republic fears the Iranian people more than any foreign power. And like all dictatorships, it does not survive on repression alone. It survives by engineering distrust. Disinformation, smear campaigns, and digital harassment are all designed to fracture opposition movements before they can unify around a shared democratic principle. Because low-trust societies become easier to govern through fear. We already heard in the context of Finland how important trust is in getting that perfect democratic score. According to the World Values Survey, Iran is among the lowest trust societies in the world. Distrust is both a product of authoritarianism and one of its most powerful tools. And yet, as the world once again fixates on geopolitics, the rights and aspirations of the Iranian people once again risk falling by the wayside. That's why Freedom House's Iran initiative is so urgent, because support for freedom in Iran cannot begin and end with military strategy or nuclear negotiations. It requires restoring internet access, freeing political prisoners, supporting civil society, countering propaganda and transnational repression, and investing in long-term accountability and justice. So what do? We go back to the shipyard in Gdansk, Solidarity succeeded because it chose principles over factions. It built trust where the state had ceded fear. Workers, intellectuals, clergy, and students chose cooperation and shared purpose over ideological purity. And that lesson matters profoundly right now, not only for Iran, but for all of us living in democracies increasingly vulnerable to polarization. When dictators divide us with propaganda, we must unite around facts. When they tether us to factions, we must anchor ourselves in principles. When they weaponize distrust, let our answer be dignity. Because if division through fear is their superpower, then trust through shared humanity must become ours. Lech Wałęsa spent years being told history was against him, that the military was too powerful, that the Soviets were too entrenched, that the West was too distracted. But authoritarian systems often appear permanent until suddenly they are not. The courage of the Iranian people is undeniable. Whether we will answer it with equal moral courage remains the defining question of our time. Thank you.
Freedom House is a nonprofit organization that was founded 85 years ago by prominent Americans, led by a Democrat and a Republican, Eleanor Roosevelt and Wendell Willkie, to advance American leadership abroad and to ultimately achieve a world where all are free.
Global freedom is currently under attack, especially by the collaboration we see between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. More and more researchers have exposed that they're working together like a dictator's club, and they're helping each other out to really try to attack democracies around the world.
The global state of freedom has been in persistent decline now for 20 years. We've also seen, unfortunately, some decline within democracies, including here at home in the US. And so I think that makes this moment even more critical for organizations like Freedom House.
Hello, my name is T. Conrad, and I'm speaking to you from the Koning Central Prisons in Yaoundé, Cameroon. I've been locked behind these walls for nearly a decade. Before I was a prisoner in an overcrowded cell, I was a journalist, a filmmaker, a human rights defender, and above all, I am a husband to my wife and a father to my beautiful children. On the 8th of December 2016, doing my job became a crime. I was arrested in my hometown of Bamenda simply for documenting peaceful protests and for pointing my camera at the truth. I was beaten, my equipment was shattered, and I was thrown into this place to serve a 15-year sentence on anti-state charges. When a government tries to erase a journalist, they rely on the war ripping away. They rely on silence. Freedom House refused to be silent, and they refused to let me be forgot. Their support has been a literal lifeline for me. Through their financial assistance, they have helped keep my family afloat while I am unable to provide for them. Through their relentless advocacy, they have kept my case alive in the halls of power.
Freedom House puts people, their rights, their struggles, their pain at the center of everything they do. When you are dealing with the urgent human situations, you need partners who can move fast, who can put everything else aside and focus on helping people. And Freedom House is exactly that kind of partner.
And in 2023, the Hong Kong government gave me a 1 million Hong Kong dollar bounty on my head, and that also came with the arrest warrant based on colluding with foreign forces, which included, for example, speaking to Freedom House about the situation and the truths about Hong Kong. And last year in 2025, the government decided to continue with their repression by arresting my father, who is now in jail for 8 months based on fabricated charges. Generations of people keep fighting and fighting year after year. We don't stop.
Freedom House keeps Belarus on the international agenda, ensuring that this human rights crisis is not ignored. but they also support people directly, helping those who fled to relocate, helping former political prisoners recover and rebuild their lives, and working together with human rights defenders to document the regime's crimes.
We're the oldest U.S. democracy organization, and this is an organization that for the vast majority of its 85-year history has been supported by prominent individuals who care deeply about the mission, especially now as many governments have cut back their assistance to democracy issues and to the cause of freedom. We need that private support more than ever, and it is essential to our mission.
I just want to thank Freedom House for always fighting for Hong Kong people, for always standing with us.
My deepest gratitude goes to everyone on the amazing Freedom House team who worked so hard to raise awareness about the challenges human rights leaders face around the world.
Please understand that when Freedom House speaks, madam, the authorities holding us here are hearing, and their spotlight acts as a shield for those of us living in the dark. The work they do is survival for people like me around. To everyone, your presence and your generosity makes this work possible, and I remain unbroken. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Co-Chair Emeritus of the Freedom House Board, Wendell L. Wilkie II.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here with members of the Roosevelt family, descendants not only of FDR, America's greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, but also of Eleanor Roosevelt, America's greatest First Lady ever. May I ask the Roosevelts, as well as Wilkie descendants, here please to stand. In 1941, Eleanor Roosevelt and Wendell Wilkie and other prominent citizens came together to create Freedom House. America and our ideals were then deeply threatened by the rising global tide of fascism. The Nazis had overrun Western Europe, and Britain was under constant, vicious aerial assault. But the prevailing mood in America in those days was deeply isolationist. There was widespread regret about our participation in World War I. Our economy was still struggling with the traumatic effects of the Great Depression. And under the banner of America First, a highly charismatic and influential demagogue impugned the loyalty of Americans who believed we must prepare to fight Hitler. Well, Eleanor Roosevelt and Wendell Wilkie believed otherwise. While they had major political differences, they were both committed to the principles of the Declaration of Independence, including the inherent rights of all mankind to live in freedom with self-government and equality under law. And each believed that the idea of America, despite our historic flaws, was, to borrow Lincoln's phrase, the last best hope of mankind. Both intensely believed that freedom's global progress was inherently in America's national interest. At home, Roosevelt and Wilkie fought anti-Semitism and forced full civil rights for all Americans. Before his death in 1944, Wilkie campaigned forcefully for American leadership in the post-war era, building upon not only our unprecedented economic and military strength, but also our timeless ideals and the goodwill that the promise of America inspired across the globe. Eleanor Roosevelt in 1948, as U.S. representative to the United Nations, led the creation and adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, over Soviet opposition. It was an extraordinary diplomatic achievement that decades later contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Empire. In the post-war era, Freedom House campaigned for American leadership through the Marshall Plan and the creation of NATO and other international institutions to protect then vulnerable free societies against Soviet aggression. Here at home, Freedom House denounced McCarthyism and supported the struggle against racial segregation, campaigning for equality for all Americans. We live once again in anxious times. Freedom is in decline. Deeply polarizing forces are insidiously at work in our society. Unfortunately, we have leaders that appeal to inner demons and ignore the better angels of our nature. If Eleanor Roosevelt and Wendell Willkie were still with us, they would remind us that even in discouraging times, our American ideals remain our greatest source of strength and inspiration. Freedom House is widely recognized as executing brilliantly on those ideals, bringing to light through highly respected and influential reports where freedom is under assault, advocating effective policies like the Magnitsky Act to advance the cause of freedom and sanction its adversaries, and providing vital assistance, as you just saw, for those serving the cause of freedom in dangerous environments. This is our mission. In the booklets at your seats, you'll find a joint letter signed by 21 members of the Roosevelt and Willkie families in support of Freedom House. We are proud to stand with this organization, which needs your help to sustain and expand the impact you just witnessed in the video. My grandfather said, freedom is an indivisible word. If we want to enjoy it, we must be prepared to extend it to everyone. In supporting Freedom House, you demonstrate that the cause of liberty is still alive and well in America, and we continue to shine its light on the world. Thank you. Now, it's my great pleasure to reintroduce Chairman of our board, Norm Willox. And Norm, you have been an outstanding chair last year and a half. A year and a half ago, we were in the midst of a challenging leadership transition, and we were on the cusp of having all federal support discontinued. You've done a magnificent job chairing the board, providing strong guidance to the staff, and getting us to the point where we are now effectively launched for brighter days ahead. So Norm, thank you.
Wow, what a great looking crowd. I want to just recognize, is Meadow, I'm not sure I can see you. Meadow, are you here? Where are you? Great leadership allows an organization and a function like this to exist, and it's not just Meadow, but it's his leadership and the team and the crew here has been just fabulous. So a big hand of applause for all of them, please. Thank you so much. I'd be remiss too if I didn't recognize Congress is a great partner of ours and a critical partner of ours, and I just want to recognize many of them that came tonight. While we have support from so many, and I know schedules are so tough, it's important to recognize those that are here tonight. Speaker Emeritus Nancy Pelosi, thank you. Senator Todd Young. Representative Steve Cohen. Representative Mike Turner. Representative Joseph Crow, and Representative Buddy Carter. Again, we're grateful for our relationships. Distinguished guests, board members, partners, defenders of freedom, members of Congress, administration, and diplomatic community, friends of Freedom House, and to those that have traveled from across America and around the world, welcome tonight. Tonight, while we gather to honor our distinguished and brave honorees who are so inspirational, we also celebrate a great American treasure, Freedom House. An idea born 85 years ago at one of the most dangerous moments in modern history, when forces of tyranny were on the march, democratic nations were uncertain of their resolve, and many questioned whether freedom itself could endure. And that is why this moment matters, and why this institution matters. And yet, even in the age of rising authoritarianism, I stand before you tonight filled not with despair, but with conviction. This conviction is for the enriched and renewed democratic alliances with the brave citizens from Ukraine to Taiwan who refuse to surrender their principles and values. As Wendell Willkie so eloquently indicated in his remarks, in that defining moment, two extraordinary Americans, Wendell Willkie and Eleanor Roosevelt, understood something profoundly important. Freedom does not defend itself. Democracy does not renew itself. History does not bend toward liberty without courageous men and women willing to bend it like we've seen here tonight. To forever honor the importance of your families to the legacy of Freedom House, I'm proud to share that this week the Executive Board approved the creation of two ex officio seats on the board, one for Wendell Willkie descendants, the other one for Eleanor Roosevelt descendants. We look forward to always having the voices of your families resonate at Freedom House. But let's be clear, this is not a moment for incremental thinking, nor for just nostalgic reflection about what democracy once was. This is a pivotal moment in modern history. While freedom has declined, authoritarian regimes are not standing still. They are strategically investing, coordinating globally, and deploying every instrument of influence, technology, and capital, and cohesive power to shape the world in their image. The free world must respond with equal clarity and greater resolve. Now more than ever, we must recommit ourselves to the intelligent use of soft power, the strategic convenings that bring together democratic leaders, innovators, investors, policymakers, and civil society around shared purposes, and to the creation of bold new funding mechanisms, including private-public partnerships, capable of mobilizing the scale of capital, talent, and institutional commitment required to defend the advance of freedom for generations to come. The defense of democracy can no longer rely on a legacy model alone. It must be reimagined, it must be reinvested in, and rebuilt for the century ahead. I'm especially thankful for our new CEO, Jamie Fly, as we celebrate our 85th anniversary. Jamie, I speak for the whole board when I say that we're excited to see you take the helm. And we're also grateful for Jennifer, as we know her commitment's going to be equal to yours. Your vision for, yes. Your vision for this organization is going to chart the future for how Freedom House perpetuates freedom and democracy around the world. And the board is eager to join you and your team in seeing this vision through. Thank you for committing to helping us write the next chapter here at Freedom House. So tonight, on the recognition of the United States' 250th anniversary, our campaign of $85 million for 85th anniversary is global, urgent, and necessary. And I am pleased to announce several anchor planned gifts to our campaign, and if I may, ask them to stand if possible so we can give them a round of applause when I finish. From Dr. Sushma Palmer, in memory of Ambassador Mark Palmer, who spoke earlier, David Wilkie, Wendell and Carletta Wilkie, and Mikkola Abramowitz and Susan Baer, who established a fund to support flagship publication Freedom of the World. I also want to recognize the transformational gift from Alfred Moses, watching from home tonight, who endowed Freedom House's Fred Hyatt program, one of the most significant political prisoner programs in the world. Everyone here tonight is making an investment in freedom's future. Our work is essential. It is up to all of us. Karen and I are investing in freedom's future for our kids and grandkids. We are grateful for all of you as well. Now, our next award. While speaking of legacy, conviction in the future, it is now my honor to present this year's Beacon Award. This honor recognizes the steadfast effort to protect global democracy by countering rising authoritarianism. For the last 5 years, I've had the privilege of witnessing and admiring the commitment to freedom demonstrated by this year's recipient, Dr. Dionisio Gutiérrez. In 2021, we were grateful that Dionisio joined the Freedom House board, bringing his decades-long commitment to the principled public debate, institutional integrity, and individual liberty. Over the last 20 years, he created and has led the Freedom and Development Foundation, an independent think tank promoting the values and principles of a free society in Central America. While advancing such policies and submitting himself and family to severe personal risk, Dionisio has strengthened the foundation of democratic resilience in the region. As a well-recognized leader for democracy across Central America and beyond, Dionisio's voice resonates as principled and passionate. He has consistently elevated the importance of accountable governance, the rule of law, and civic responsibility, even amid political headwinds. At a time when democratic norms are under sustained pressure, his undetermined leadership has served as an important reminder that principled civil engagement and institutional stewardship remain essential and fundamental to the defense of freedom. On a personal note, if you have the fortune of knowing Dionisio and his wife and strong partner, Anna, you know that nothing distinguishes them quite so much as their compassion for humanity. For not long ago, Dionisio arranged for Freedom House board members to visit Jose Ruben Zamora, a journalist who was unjustly imprisoned in Guatemala. The experience was a compelling and sobering reminder of the human toll of intimidation and oppression, something never lost on Dionisio. It is why he has dedicated so much of his life to advancing freedom. So well deserved. So if you will you all please join me in welcoming and celebrating the 2026 Beacon Award honoree, Dr. Dionisio Gutiérrez.
Thank you, Norm, for your generous words, and thank you to Freedom House for this special honor. As Freedom House marks its 85th anniversary, I'm deeply moved to celebrate an institution that has stood with courage and clarity on the side of liberty, democracy, and human dignity for generations. For me, as a Latin American, this geopolitical hour has an importance to see when the tyrannies of Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela are under mounting pressure, carries an emotion that is difficult to put into words. To see freedom and democracy coming into view for the first time in 67 years in La Habana, 42 plus 19 in Managua, and 20 in Caracas is nothing less than extraordinary. For those of us who have lost dear friends, family members, and fellow citizens to communism and dictatorship, to live long enough to witness this hour is a privilege of the highest order. It is also a moment for gratitude. Gratitude to the United States and to all the institutions, leaders, and citizens who defend freedom not as a slogan, but as a moral duty. Freedom House has done exactly that for 85 years. Tonight, I celebrate not only this honor, but also the hope of liberty for those still living under authoritarian regimes, the hope that tyranny is not eternal and that freedom, though delayed, still has the power to return. Thank you.
Everyone, please welcome to the stage Barbara Moses.
Thank you so much. Tonight, I have been given the honor of presenting an award named for my father, Alfred Moses. I want to thank Freedom House for giving me this opportunity, and I want to congratulate you on your 85th anniversary. Many of you know my father as a diplomat, as a philanthropist, as a patron of the arts and literature, or through his lifelong work on behalf of the Jewish community, both at home and abroad. In each of these roles, and in every chapter of his life, my father has been a steadfast and vigorous supporter of democracy, wherever it is threatened, both here and abroad. Now, I know my father is watching tonight. I don't mean that way. I mean he's home, watching on Zoom. So I want to express my appreciation also to my father for inspiring so many, including myself, to choose a life of public service. The Alfred Moses Liberty Award honors exemplary courage by political prisoners or outstanding efforts to secure their release. It shares the spirit of the Freedom House's globally recognized Free Them All initiative, which my father helped establish. Free Them All shines a light on political prisoners around the globe. The program is named in memory of the late Washington Post journalist, Fred Hyatt. We are grateful to Fred and to his wife, Pooh Shapiro, whose generosity helps sustain the program to this day. This year's awardee is the founder and leader of the Cuba Decide movement, Rosa, María, Payá, Acevedo. Rosa Maria's activism was inspired by the pro-democracy work of her own father, Osvaldo Payá, and is guided by a deep belief that democracy must never be abandoned or taken for granted. Rosa Maria has turned that conviction into action. In Cuba, peaceful dissent is often punished with imprisonment or worse. Nonetheless, Rosa Maria has organized unprecedented coordination among pro-democracy forces in Cuba and across the hemisphere. The Cuba Decide movement is a nonviolent, nonpartisan grassroots campaign working towards democracy in Cuba. Rosa Maria also founded and serves as the executive director of the Foundation for Pan-American Democracy. She has built broad coordination across democratic actors in Cuba through the Freedom Accord, which is a roadmap for the restoration of democracy in Cuba, and across the hemisphere through the Latin American Youth Network for Democracy, which unites more than 100 organizations spanning 20 countries. In 2021, Rosa Maria established the Transatlantic Parliamentary Forum, which forges legislative alliances to advance human rights on the global stage. Through these efforts, she has participated in and convened policy discussions, congressional engagement, public advocacy initiatives, and multilateral dialogue involving the OAS, the Organization of American States, the United Nations, the European Parliament, and the US government. Most recently, OAS member states elected Rosa Maria to a 4-year term as a commissioner of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which is charged with promoting and protecting human rights throughout the Western Hemisphere. In honoring Rosa Maria, we recognize a leader whose work embodies a core principle long championed by Freedom House and by my father, that freedom flourishes where governments are chosen by and accountable to their people. Thanks to her persistence, her passion, and her moral clarity, Rosa Maria has ensured that political repression in Cuba has been and is met with global attention and principled action, perhaps never more so than today. Please join me in recognizing Rosa Maria Payá Acevedo.
Thank you so much for the special honor of receiving an award in your father's name. And my gratitude to Freedom House for sharing my father's spirit and for promoting the virtues of democracy. Tonight, I do not stand before you in any official capacity. Rather, I want to speak to you first and foremost as a Cuban. I want to speak to you about Ernesto Brivá Sampé. Ernesto had a little child he had not seen in a very long time because he had been in prison since the protests of July 11, 2021, when the Cuban people rise in one cry for freedom. Yesterday, we learned that Ernesto had been dead for over a week. He died in prison from malnutrition because hunger is one of the many tortures to which political prisoners in Cuba are subject today. Let this recognition honor Ernesto and all Cuban political prisoners today. And let the world know this. The struggle for Cuba's freedom is more alive than ever. It lives in the prison cells where men like Felix Navarro continue the work of my father, Oswaldo Payá, who once embodied the democratic alternative of the Cuban people and was murdered by the Cuban regime in 2012. The fight for freedom in Cuba lives in the courage of young women like his daughter, Zailí Navarro. It lies in the memories of the political prisoners like Ernesto and the memory of many other civic leaders that are not with us today. It lives in the streets of the island where the protests do not cease, because despite the deep humanitarian catastrophe that the Cuban regime has forced into the Cuban people, despite the hunger, despite the lack of medicine, despite the lack of energy, despite the brutal repression, we Cubans, we are convinced that the only way to overcome the crisis is to get rid of the dictatorship, and we are risking everything to freedom. The struggle for freedom lives in the democratic alternative we have built because we, Cubans, we are ready for change. The main democratic forces in Cuba and in exile are united in the Freedom Accord. It is a unified transition framework, a roadmap with 3 phases: liberation, stabilization and reconstruction, and democratization, culminating in what will be the first free, fair, and general elections in Cuba in over 70 years. Today, the United States announced the prosecution of Raúl Castro for his crimes against 4 American citizens, pilots that were rescued refugees in the Florida Strait. This is an act of justice, but this is also, after 30 years of the crime, in a moment in which the Cuban people is undergoing a very crucial, a very fragile moment. This is an act of solidarity. And we are grateful. We are grateful for every action of solidarity taken by the Cuban people's greatest ally today, which is the government of the United States. Today, we commemorate 124 years of independence. The Cuban Republic was born a century and a quarter ago, but still we are not celebrating freedom. However, I am convinced that we are standing at the threshold of change, because today, the protests and civic mobilization in the streets demanding systemic change are converging with democratic Cuban forces that are united and preparing to manage the transition, together with the effective solidarity of the United States, pushing alongside us for the change our country so desperately needs. Because for us, for Cubans, achieving freedom, changing the system is existential. But Cuba matters for you too. Because Havana represents the longest running national security threat to the US and to the hemisphere. Because Havana is Putin's best ally. Because the regime is directly behind the largest migratory crisis of the modern history, displacing millions and destabilizing the entire region. Because the regime transformed Cuba's national territory into a sanctuary for terrorists. Because the regime is the home of spy bases from China. But the most affected of all has been Latin America. Tolerating 67 years of the Cuban communist dictatorship in the island of Cuba made impossible democratic stability in Latin America. The regime is behind the collapse and the maintenance, the collapse of democracy and the maintenance of the Venezuelan dictatorship. It's behind the centers of tortures in Nicaragua. It's behind the destabilization in Bolivia. And that's why a democratic change in Cuba is the key to restoring liberty throughout the region, and with it, peace, prosperity, and justice. The Cuban regime is the head, it has been for decades, the head of the authoritarian octopus in our hemisphere. It is the Berlin Wall of the Americas, and tearing it down will require of all of us. But tearing it down is the only thing we should do. As my father once said, the child, together with the people, of which it is an inseparable part, holds onto the hope of a new Cuba, where we all live in the fraternity of the children of God. The night will not be eternal. Thank you so much.
To present this year's Freedom Award, please welcome Speaker Emerita of the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, and the 27 U.S. National Security Advisor, Ambassador Robert O'Brien.
Thank you very much. Speaker Pelosi and I want to start by congratulating Freedom House on 85 years of defending freedom around the world. We also want to congratulate Freedom House on selecting 2 Californians to present this award. This organization has a remarkable history and impact and remains a light supporting the defenders of freedom everywhere. When I had the privilege of serving as National Security Advisor during President Trump's first term, we shared Freedom House's commitment. And we'd called out the governments and the leaders and the tyrants and the thugs who are denying the rights and freedoms to the people of the world. In 2020, when Jimmy Lai was arrested, I remember the president went to the Rose Garden and made a statement. And we sanctioned the Communist Party of China. We sanctioned for the first time members of the Communist Party of China's Central Committee. And because Jimmy Lai was arrested because he gave a powerful voice to the people of Hong Kong. Through his media platforms and his example, he gave voice to the people of Hong Kong who were demanding their freedom. They wanted access to a free and independent media at a minimum if they weren't going to get political rights. Nearly 6 years later, Mr. Lai is still in prison. And unfortunately, he's subjected to solitary confinement. This is a tool of the Chinese Communist Party that they do. They've done it to other prisoners that I worked when I was a special presidential envoy for hostage affairs to get out. They deny reading materials, they deny books, they deny Bibles, they deny the basic instruments of being a human. And yet Jimmy Lai has been undaunted. And he's become an example for all of us. He's become a symbol for the world. I'm so proud as an American citizen that we, as a country, we work across party lines with Speaker Pelosi, with our Democrat friends, to bring Jimmy home. to get him out of jail, so that he can be a light for liberty and freedom around the world. Thank you for this honor to introduce and recognize his daughter, who will accept the award on his behalf. And God bless Jimmy Lai and his family and his friends and colleagues in Hong Kong. God bless you all. Speaker Morrison.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your leadership and for your kind words about Jimmy Lai, such a remarkable figure. As I prepare to present the award to the two of us present the award to Jimmy's daughter, I first want to congratulate Freedom House for 85 years of total effectiveness, to congratulate Jamie on his new position and his family for supporting him so strongly. Norm, your remarks were so beautiful, so congratulations to you and the rest of the board and the staff for all that you have done. This evening has been very special to hear so many, both in terms of the presenters and the awardees. To just hear Finland accept the award for 100% rating. Imagine bringing that beautiful strength as new members of NATO. And Sushma presenting the Mark Palmer Award. In 1989, I was a brand new member of Congress and went with a delegation to Hungary. And Mark Palmer and Sushma welcomed us at the residency with an array of dissidents. This was highly unusual, and we all gave credit to President George Herbert Walker Bush. And I'm learning tonight that he wasn't really fully aware of that meeting. But when you visit, years later when I visited Hungary and Orban was president, he said, our hero for Hungary was George Herbert Walker Bush. So Sushma, it's always wonderful to see you. And then to see the Board for Freedom of the Press, the guardian of our democracy, freedom of the press. Congratulations. Our founders knew that and had that, as you know, as part of our, actually our founders wanted it all in the Constitution. James Madison, he wanted it in the Constitution, but the agreement was they'd have the Constitution and this would be the Bill of Rights, the amendment to the Constitution. But right up there is so important with all the freedoms that it was there, that the Constitution was to protect. And then to just hear just so many beautiful stories. There was a story about Cuba and liberty and that award that we just heard, and before that, to hear Norm make the beautiful award that he made for the beacon of liberty for a great supporter from Guatemala. So all of it's so remarkable. I just want to say that I had the privilege of sitting at the table with Vladimir Kupa Morsa. You may not know him, but he was a prisoner in Russia for a long time. And his wife, Eugenie, who's also at the table, lobbied for him, advocated, I should say advocated, for him over and over again. And as my colleagues who are here, Democrats and Republicans, this is a cause that unifies the Congress on any one of these issues, right? It unifies the Congress. We come together, forget our differences, we're united on this. And then and it works, not just our unity, but your activism, Freedom House and so many other organizations speaking out, because the most horrible form of torture to somebody who's a political prisoner is that their prisoners tell them, nobody even remembers you. They don't even know why you are here. Why don't you just give up and confess? But we want people to know that they are not forgotten, they're well remembered, and Freedom House has been so much an important part of that. I saw your reaction when we saw Venezuela acknowledged, and I remember one time we were together. Well, I have to say the crowd was half as big. My, how we have all grown here at Freedom House has grown. This is, as Jamie said, the largest event ever and growing. Congratulations to you all. But when I saw your reaction to Venezuela, one night I was honored with Lindsey Graham. That was a pair, right, together. And but the focal point for that evening was freedom in Venezuela. So Freedom House, that was a number of years ago, Freedom House was early in that advocacy for democracy when people just didn't really know that much about what was going on. So in any event, again and again and again, and so many wonderful things, and as I said, the Beacon Award, the Liberty Award, all the names, all the good things. Tonight we have a privilege. I mean, when I say what I'm going to say to you about Jimmy Lai and the rest, I want to say that this applies to every country. We cannot hesitate to do everything in our power to free prisoners or to speak out for human rights in a country because of any commercial or economic interest. If we hesitate, whatever it is, we lose all moral authority to speak out for human rights any place. So let's not have commercial interest be a barrier. Let us cooperate with each other using our leverage. And now it's a privilege just to talk about Jimmy Lai. As a leader in the free press, Jimmy Lai acted as a guardian of democracy. He was imprisoned under the pretext of national security. In reality, he was arrested because authoritarian leaders fear those who refuse to hide the truth. As the ambassador rightly said, the cause of Jimmy Lai has united America. Even the president called for his release during his recent trip to China. For political prisoners, one of the deepest fears, as I said, is that the world will move on and forget them. Every time we say Jimmy Lai's name, we send a message to Beijing and to all who imprison people for their beliefs. We remember, we are watching, and we will not stop until Jimmy Lai and all political prisoners are free. Tonight, Freedom House presents its highest honor, the Freedom Award, to Jimmy Lai. In his heartbreaking absence, we are proud to present the award to a remarkable woman who has refused to let the world turn from her father. She is not only a loving and devoted daughter, but a relentless advocate for freedom. Not only for her father, she's been an advocate for Joshua, well, for other prisoners as well. She is certainly proud, doing her father proud. Alongside Claire, the strength and perseverance shown by Jimmy's son, Claire's brother, Sebastian, and the entire Lai family have inspired people around the world to keep on fighting for justice and freedom. On behalf of Jimmy Lai, representing him tonight, please welcome Claire Lai.
Thank you to the Freedom House Board, Jamie, Katie, Gerardo, for presenting my father with this prestigious award today. I, of course, must thank Speaker Pelosi and Ambassador O'Brien, both for their support and for presenting me with this award on behalf of my father. If I went into everyone for all they do for my father and our family, we might be here all night, but I do want to thank, firstly, both houses of Congress, starting, of course, with Senator Scott and his wonderful team, and the teams we have the privilege of working with, everyone at our tables, and last but not least, certainly not least, President Trump and his administration for their commitment to my father's release. The Tiananmen Square massacre of 1989 was a defining moment in my father's life. It was for him, and for many in Hong Kong, a political awakening. Before the tanks rolled in, he was inspired by the protesters who were filled with hope for a better tomorrow. After the horror of the massacre, he helped many find safety abroad. He wrote a scathing critique of the premier, and he paid the price. He was forced to sell his company shortly thereafter. It wasn't long until he decided to go into the media business. It was right before the British handover, and many in Hong Kong wondered what fate awaited them. Here I will quote my father's recent testimony from his national security trial. I thought it was a good idea for somebody like me to participate in delivering freedom, because the more information you have, the more you are in the know, the more you are free. So came the birth of the newspaper Apple Daily. In its inaugural editorial, the newspaper promised not to cower in fear under pressure. It promised to be a voice for the Hong Kong people, a voice for the promised democratic reforms, and it was. Eventually, it too was forced to close by the CCP-backed authorities. When pressure came, and it always did, whether in the form of firebombs or the desertion of friends, my father took it in stride because he knew he was doing what was right. Even now, in prison, he knows he's a steward of God's gifts and answerable to him for how he uses them. My father was born as far away from freedom as one possibly could be. He was born in the mainland to an affluent family right before the establishment of the People's Republic of China. His family was declared the enemy of the people before he could walk or talk. As a boy of 8, he began working as a porter in a train station. It was there he met some passengers traveling from Hong Kong, and he gained a window into a different world he could only dream of. He arrived into Hong Kong 4 years later, and once there, Dad worked on factory floors, where he lost part of his fingertip and part of his hearing, but he gained so much more. Curiosity, a belief in the dignity of work, and a confidence that he too could succeed. And he very much did. When he came to America in the course of business, he was exposed to greater knowledge and ideas, and he embraced it. There's a Chinese saying that Dad used to print. Translated roughly, it goes, sometimes people need to have the courage to knowingly do what is impossible. Dad did that throughout his life. He showed courage in service of others and the ideal of freedom, which today we celebrate here. He didn't count the costs. Now my father is in a cell no bigger than a closet. He turned 79 this year, is in failing health, suffers from diabetes, heart issues, a severely compromised immune system. In the offices of Apple Daily, there used to be a banner. It said, colleagues, you've worked hard, and indeed they did. But perhaps today I can take the opportunity to say, Daddy, you've worked hard. I too believe there are some worthy but impossible fights. Securing your freedom, however, is both worthy and possible. With moral resolve, strenuous effort, and the aid of the Holy Spirit, I pray I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Please welcome the Vice Chair of the Freedom House Board, Mark Goodman.
Well, good evening. It is my high honor to start to bring us to a close here. So I have promised the Freedom House staff the speech that I wrote I would not give because many want to get home and look at the Western Conference Finals, and my Colorado Avalanche are in the Western Finals, so I will get us out of here soon. But before I do that, let me say thank you to all of you who are with us. Your time, attention, your investment is heartfelt. I can tell you we are a stone's throw away from our goal of raising $1.5 million this evening. I mean, like a few $1,000s away. So one of my responsibilities is to remind you, for those that have not had the opportunity to do so, you can pull out your phone, look at the QR code, write a check, send snail mail, whatever it needs to be, but to get us over our hump. And we know with all of your great generosity, we will make that happen. We'd also like to honor, as you well know, freedom has many faces, as our previous guests have just mentioned. And I want to acknowledge Roxana Sabiri, who is with us. She was a political prisoner in Iran, and we are so grateful and thankful that she is with us here this evening. Last but not least, certainly I want to say thank you to Laura Roosevelt for your paintings and what you've done to contribute to this evening. I'm very pleased to announce that we have raised just under $25,000 for your generosity of the paintings here this evening. So thank you, Laura. I do have to say, on a personal note, I had offered to share some of my yellow sticky note drawings as a part of the auction, and the Freedom House staff summarily rejected it in an authoritarian way. But my democratic self-esteem is still in check. I want you to know that. So let me say this in conclusion. Again, in addition to a heartfelt thanks, I want to make sure you know how much it means to us, everything that's going on for those that advocate, fight for, defend freedom, democracy, and human rights, what organizations like Freedom House and our partner organizations who are with us this evening have been through in the last certainly 18 months. It's not lost on me or us that it's certainly been a journey path. It's required tenacity and certainly a lot of hard work for us to be where we are. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your support and remind you that certainly freedom doesn't sleep. So please continue to invest in us, and we're very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for sharing this very inspiring evening with us. Congratulations again to this year's honorees. Your examples remind us of the responsibility we each have to promote freedom around the world. The Investigating in Freedom's Future campaign will be one of the most effective ways to advance freedom at this critical moment. So please continue to answer the call to give. Your gifts will help create a stronger, more secure, and more free future for all of us. We invite you to continue celebrating with us at the after-party reception. Thank you and good night.